Hey friend, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Wendy and I am with a ministry called Inspire Ministries, and I am so glad that you have clicked on today's video. If you have clicked on today's video, chances are you have been maybe hurt by somebody. Maybe somebody has hurt your feelings. Maybe someone has lied about you, told rumors about you. Maybe you have been hurt by someone and it's been ongoing for years and years. Today, I want to just share with you some of my initial thoughts as I kind of debrief with you today something that has been gnawing at me for a little while now, something that hurt us, hurt me, and hurt my family recently. And without going into too many details, I want to share with you today 11 lessons, if you will, that I have learned through this process. The truth is that this is just a sit down, old-fashioned chat with me type of video. I don't have a lot of notes. I just have a few things written down as it relates to the lessons that I would like to tell you or to convey to you. And I really would like to pretend that we are just having coffee today, two friends sitting down, and I am sharing my heart with you. Chances are, like I said, you have been hurt by someone in your past. Someone maybe said something bad about you. They spread lies about you, rumors about you. We have all been there. Maybe you are in the middle of something right now and you are having a very difficult time getting through it. Maybe you are having a very hard time forgiving that person and moving on. And I want to tell you before we go any further that you're not alone. You are not alone in the way that you think and in the way that you feel. But I want to share with you today 11 things that I have learned from a personal experience that happened to me and my family just a few weeks ago, and how we are using this challenging time to press in more to the Lord, to seek after Him and find out how He would have us to act and behave, especially in this season of time. A few weeks ago, my family had something happen to us that was fairly traumatic. And a lot of you who are not new to this channel, or a lot of you who are not new to my private page on Facebook, you very well know what I'm talking about. My daughter did a video about the very thing that happened to us, and I'll go ahead and link that down below so that you can get a little groundwork as far as what happened to us. But this thing that happened to us was very devastating, and it broke our hearts as a family. It was hard to get through, and primarily because it involved someone or someones whom we don't really know who they are, telling lies about our family and making us look in a very poor, dim light. And it's something that just happened to us recently within the last 3 or 4 weeks, and so it is very raw still. And so I want to talk to you about 11 things, and I'm sure as time progresses, as time goes on, I am going to have more revelation, because I believe that God is growing us and He is teaching us and He is always speaking to us when we listen. And so I bet you that there are going to be more things that He is going to show me in the weeks to come. But I wanted to come on here and give you some of my initial thoughts and some of the initial lessons that I believe that God has given me, so that you can experience this with me in a very raw and real state. Now, again, this particular situation that happened to me and my family, we believe with a great degree of certainty that the lies and the insults and the damage that was hurled at our family came from someone that we know, and someone maybe that we know really well. We're not 100% sure about this, but there are a lot of indicators that point to this. And when this thing happened, we were blindsided. We were really taken for a loop. We didn't see it coming. We never anticipated this kind of hate. We didn't even have any clue that this was on the horizon. So when this happened, we were in the middle of moving my daughter, my son-in-law, and my grandbaby out from their home in Nashville to a new location, a new place entirely. And so in the middle of that, and in the middle of them going to California for a trip, and in the middle of just kind of all of this chaos and just all of this upheaval came this thing. And how many know that that often is the case, that the insults that the enemy likes to hurl at us, or the situations that we often find ourselves in that are hurtful and devastating and painful, never come at just the right time, right? And so these things came to us at a very raw, emotional time for us anyway, just out of the gate. And so when these things happened, they put us in a situation where I believe that as believers, we had some choices to make. And I want to give you 11 lessons that I've learned so far from this experience. The first one that I've written down on my notepad here is, I've got this one chance to get this right. I remember thinking about this immediately after this thing happened to us. I remember thinking this thought, I've got this one chance, this one opportunity, this one moment in time to get this right. How am I going to respond? How am I going to respond to the things that are happening? How am I going to love? How am I going to forgive? And how am I going to choose to move forward? You know, I think about this all of the time. As believers, you and I get an opportunity to get this right this side of heaven. And that means that we have often been given this opportunity by God to make a good choice or not, to serve the Lord still or not, to trust Him or not. We've got one chance often to get it right. Why? Because there are spectators. Christians have people oftentimes who are looking on in our life. They're looking at us. How are they going to do it? How are they going to respond? How are they going to choose kindness and goodness and all of the things that they claim to be a part of if they are a Christian? How are they going to utilize those things when trouble hits them, when difficulties come to their family? And so I remember thinking about this, and I believe that it is something that behooves all of us to think about as we move forward in our life. It benefits all of us to think about, how am I going to get this right? How am I going to choose the right path? How am I going to choose wisely how I react to situations? I wrote once years ago that we have an opportunity to respond to His goodness or to be a reactionary, to react to what the enemy is doing. I can either be responsive, which is really being responsible, or I can be reactionary, which is reacting to the darkness of the world. And I do not want to highlight the damage that the enemy has done in this world. I don't want to shed light to anything that the enemy is doing. So I've got this one chance to get it right. Number two, I remember thinking about this after this happened, the evening that it happened, and that was this. And again, I wrote this down on a sticky note. God allows things to see what we'll do with it, how we will use this for His glory. You know, so often we are tempted to say that everything that happens to us that hurts, anything that happens to us that is painful, anything that happens to us that would cause a sickness or an illness or a delay or a setback, that we tend to always give credit to the enemy. We tend to do this more times than not. We say, well, the enemy did this to me, or the enemy caused me to do this, or man, the enemy is really after me today. When truly what it could be is that God allowed this thing to happen for the reason of either giving Him glory or not. It's a test. It's a test. And so I remember sitting there the evening that this all happened with my family, holding my grandson, rocking him to sleep, shedding all of these tears as I put him to bed that evening, and thinking to myself, I believe that God has given us this as a gift, as an opportunity to see what we will do with it, to see if we will glorify Him in it or not. We as believers have that choice before us every single day. I will either give God the glory in the midst of this difficult season, in the midst of this hardship, or not. And you can take that right down to the very practical level. Man, someone pulled out in front of me in traffic and I'm so angry. I can choose in that moment to give God glory or not. man, I was really stricken with this horrible illness that put me down 5 days in bed. I can choose to glorify God in it or not. I believe that these are often the tests that believers are given to prove their faith in Jesus Christ. The third thing that I wrote down is this: God won't dwell in unclean environments. And where I got this is Acts 17:24. Some versions say that he will not be honored in unclean homes, that he will not dwell in places that have been designed or crafted by mere human hands. And so I love this. I think about this all of the time. I want to be a place where God dwells, where he delights to come, where he sets up camp, if you will. I want to be that place. I want to be a vessel that is a place where God can rest. And so I believe so much that it was not an accident that I would run into Acts 17:24 that tells us that God will actually not dwell in a place where it is an unclean environment, where there were unclean hands that created this environment. I want to live a purified life, a righteous life, a holy life set apart for God to dwell in. And so I believe that if I harbor any bitterness, if I harbor any kind of anger or retaliating mindset or attitude, that he will not dwell here, and he will not be that place of rest that I need, nor will he give me the strength that I need to get through the situation that I'm faced with. And so I believe that is a huge lesson that God allowed me to see the very night that this all went down. The fourth thing happened to me when I heard a song on a playlist, and I had never even heard this song before, but I had downloaded the entire album, and it's a Phil Wickham's album, and you can look up this song for yourself. Phil Wickham has a song called 1,000 Names, and he talks about how God is given all of these names, right? Provider, healer, comforter, friend. And I thought about this when I was taking my grandson on a walk the very next day after all of these things happened to us. And I remember being on a walk and hearing this song in my earbuds and going, wow, yes, that's it. And the truth really is, how can I know that God is the provider if I never need something, right? If I never need provision? How do I know God is the healer unless I am put in a position where I need healing? How do I know that he is my comforter if I never need comforted? And so I love this so much because it gives me a way to choose to see God as that name because of the situation that I'm in. So the bottom line, how will we ever know him as these names if we are never put in circumstances where we have to know him as such? And so I believe greatly in this circumstance, it was so needful for us to realize that God is a friend, that God is a provider, that God is the one who gives strength. He's a strengthener. He is a sustainer, right? He is all of these things. And the only way that we know him as all of these names is because we are allowed by God to be in circumstances, in situations where we have to exercise and we have to see him as that name, because we have no other choice than to rely on that name given to God. Number 5, I remember just writing this down right after it happened: reduce my options. I was in a Bible study, an 8-week Bible study when this happened. And I told those who I lead that Zoom study on Thursday nights, I told this group of women, I said, it is no doubt that I would go through something where I had to exercise or put into play the very things that I was teaching in my class. And so it is no surprise to me that I would go through something where I had to rely on the very words that I was teaching to be the very strength that would actually strengthen me, the teacher. And so I remember thinking about this very thing. I live with reduced options, that I reduce my options. And I'm getting ready to film a video for you so that you can understand exactly what I mean by this. But I live with reduced options, which means, like, for instance, I don't wake up in the morning and try to think about what I'm going to do for the first thing of my day. I never think, okay, it's either exercise or read my Bible. It's naturally just read my Bible. Why? Because I live with reduced options. When someone hurts me, when someone accuses me of something that I didn't do, when someone tells me that I'm a terrible person or says these lies about me or hurls insults at me, the very first response that the Lord wants from me is to forgive that person. He wants me to live with reduced options, which means I don't sit there and think, well, I wonder if I'm going to forgive or not, or I wonder if their actions weren't justified, so I can't forgive because the Lord would have me not to forgive in this situation. I automatically have to live with reduced options to say, I am forgiving that person. How do we live in the natural overflow from those natural instincts of forgiving, loving, and giving grace? How do we live with those reduced options? And again, I'm going to give more clarity on this particular subject, so stay tuned for future videos about what that means, reducing your options. Number 6, I wrote this down also. Make no mistake, the enemy is after our family, and our kids are a great target for the enemy. Make no mistake that the enemy is after our children. He is after our children, and he will do everything he can to destroy our children, to destroy our family unit, to cause chaos within the family. And so I just believe that it is very beneficial for us to remember that, to think about that when something like this happens, to not give credit necessarily to the enemy for the thing happening that God just allowed to happen in our circumstance or in our family or in our situation or in our life, but to be clear that what the enemy would love to do is see us destroyed by the very things that God allows, to be destroyed by the things that we put our hope and trust in. And so I believe sometimes that is causing chaos and causing turmoil and causing dissension within the family unit. So pay attention to the very things that the enemy is doing. He likes to pull at the fabric of the family. Don't let him do it. Number 7, another lesson that I learned is how we respond says everything to an outside world of who Jesus is. It says everything. So when I can forgive, then they know him as the great one who forgives. When I can show grace, they see him as a gracious Father. When I can love, they see Jesus in me. And isn't that the goal of every Christ follower? To have other people in our life, in our surroundings, in our families, in our workplaces, to see Jesus in us. To say, you know what? I don't know how they could ever behave like that. I don't know how they have the strength to forgive like that. Oh yeah, they're Jesus followers. That's why. Everything in our life ought to point to him, ought to point to Jesus Christ. Everybody that sees us, sees how we act, sees our attitude, sees how we love other people, ought to say they do it because Jesus Christ gives them the strength to do it. And it's the only way, because it's not in our human nature, right? It is completely the antithesis of our natural reaction as human beings. And so can our life point to Jesus? It should. And if it is pointing to Jesus, it should be rooted in grace. It should be rooted in hope. It should be rooted in patience, in goodness, in kindness, and in self-control. This next one is a lesson that I learned from a Facebook comment to the YouTube video that I linked down below of my daughters. And this comment said this one line, and I remember pointing this out as soon as I saw it. The Facebook comment, of course, said that they were sorry that our family was going through this, and it really came from a place of support and comfort and compassion. And this comment said this: the enemy lives among us. I'll never forget when I saw that. The enemy lives among us. And of course, again, this came from a very innocent, loving, supportive place. But I remember when I saw it and I went, something's wrong with thinking that way. The enemy lives among us. Listen, I don't know about you, but as a Christ follower, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that the enemy lives among me. No, actually, I live in a world that is run and operated by Satan. But I don't belong to this place. I belong to my heavenly home. And so in this place, I am a foreigner. In this place, I am only passing through. Satan doesn't live among me. Oh no, he rules the world that I live in, but he has no power over me. He has no power over how I think, how I act, how I react, how I behave, how I forgive, how I do my daily life, how I raise my children, how I conduct myself in my marriage. Like, he doesn't have any hold on any of that. And so I will not allow myself to believe the enemy walks among us, not among me, not among me and my family. Now listen, he might rule, he might sit in a ruling position of this world, but I don't belong to this world. And if you belong to Jesus Christ, listen, friend, you don't belong to this world either. Your home is in heaven, and we are only walking through this place. We are only travelers in this foreign land as a foreigner. And this is not the place that we get our jurisdiction and our judgment from. And so we have to live as foreigners in a foreign land and say, you know what? I am not ruled and operated by anything the enemy does. I'm ruled and operated by kingdom realities, by Jesus Christ himself. Number 9, I remember writing down these 2 authentic prayer requests. Now, I mean it when I say this, that these came from a very authentic place in my heart. Not because I am great, not because I have learned all that there is to learn, not because I am more holy than anyone else, but I remember thinking these things because I have been dwelling on his goodness and dwelling on the Word of God and reading all about forgiveness for so many years now, for so many years. And so I was able to pray these 2 authentic prayers, I believe from a very authentic, real place and a very real, authentic heart posture, these 2 prayers. The first one is, may God be glorified. Anytime you see me say that, to God be the glory, I mean it. A lot of times I get comments here on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram where they will tell me that they like something that I've written or they appreciate something that I've done in my ministry, and I love it so much. But I never want to get it to a point where I am expecting those good comments to come because I want God to get the glory. So a lot of times you will see me respond, to God be the glory. That is shifting that glory from myself to him. And so I wanted to pray that authentic prayer, to God be the glory. To God be the glory, even in this situation, even in this poor circumstance, even in this battle that we're in, even when it doesn't make sense, even when everything else tells us in the world, from a worldly perspective, right? Everything tells us that we have every reason to be mad. We have every reason to retaliate. Listen, I believe that we have one prayer to pray above everything, and that is, to God be the glory. Even in the midst of this pain, even if it hurts, even here, especially here, may God get the glory. And then number 2, that this person that hurled insults and thought to be mean and cruel and hateful, that they would actually come into a personal relationship, a saving relationship with Jesus Christ for themselves. That has to be the goal of every believer, that the person that hurt us will actually come to know Christ for themselves. Can we, as believers, get to this place where these are the 2 reactionary responses, if you will, to hardship? May God be glorified and may the people that hurt me come to know Jesus for themselves. Number 10, I remember this also came from a Facebook response. And I remember when I initially shared what happened to my family, and I did it by way of sharing my daughter's video that she did on her YouTube channel. And I remember initially thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And as the stream of comments began to come in, I was like, okay, well, maybe I just need to read these comments. I wasn't going to at first because I wanted God to get the glory, and I didn't want to look like I was seeking after any kind of approval or seeking pity at all. I didn't want to appear to be that way at all because we truly weren't. But I remember there was a Facebook comment that came in, and this person actually thanked me. And what they said is, thank you for bringing this to light because evil hates the truth. So we have to expose the truth. And I remember thinking how great that was, that you and we get an opportunity. We have an opportunity when we share our story, when we give our testimony, when we talk about the things that the Lord has done. What we are doing is we are exposing the truth. And the enemy hates the truth. He hates light and he hates truth of any kind. And so every time you can, speak the truth and speak it out loud. Why do we do that? Because the enemy can't read our thoughts. He can hear what we say, but he can't read our thoughts. So we have to expose truth by our words. We have to expose truth with our mouth. And so every time you can, tell your story. Every time you can, speak of his redemptive goodness. Speak of his kindness. Speak of the ways that he has provided for you. Speak things like, I'm speaking out into the light today, the ways that God is teaching me and training me even in the midst of evil. Speak it because the enemy hates truth to be exposed. So really think about that. And then the final thing that I want to tell you is something that came to me almost immediately after this happened. I was driving along the road by myself, and I remember thinking this, really thinking it to the point where I was speaking these words out loud. And I remember saying this out loud in my car. There is a reason that this happened, and that is to see how we would honor him or not, to see how we would glorify him or not. This is the very reason that it happened. Listen, it's oftentimes our bent to say, okay, how can I give God the glory in the midst of this hardship, right? Even though this thing happened, how can I glorify God? But I want to go a step further than that even. And, we've already shared that one on this list, but I want to go a little step further than that. I want us to think about this. Maybe that is the entire reason that it happened. Maybe if for nothing else, it was to give us a gift, that we would unwrap this gift and we would say, yes, this is the reason, so that we can learn what it means to glorify the Lord, so that we can learn what it means to magnify his name. I said to a class that I lead recently, the best place, the safest place for us to be as believers in Jesus is in the fear of the Lord. And I will say that again. The greatest place, the safest environment for us to be in as believers in Jesus Christ is in the fear of the Lord. That means having reverence for him. That means praising his name. That means glorifying him. That means magnifying him with our very life. And we have been given an opportunity, and that is to glorify him or not, to praise him or not, consider him to be our greatest need in our life or not. And so maybe it's not just about getting an opportunity to glorify him even though something bad happens. Maybe the something bad that happened, the whole reason, the whole purpose was to allow you an opportunity to get to know him more, to rely on his strength more, to glorify him more, to magnify him, to tell of his goodness in the land of the living while you still have an opportunity. Friend, these are the lessons that I believe that God is teaching me has taught me and will continue to teach me as I say yes to him, as I lean into him more, as I press into him, as I trust him to guide us, to guide our thoughts, to guide our actions, to guide our responses. We have opportunities to give God a sacrifice here on earth while it still costs us something. And I believe that these are the key things that he has been teaching me in recent weeks. And I just wanted to share them with you because I thought you could be encouraged by them as well. I would love to know in the comments down below, what lessons has God been teaching you, even in the midst of hardship, even in pain, even in suffering, even in sickness? What has the Lord been teaching you? Listen, we are better together when we can sit down and just share these things with one another. We can be inspired, we can be encouraged, and we can be challenged to go deeper in our relationship with Jesus Christ. And friend, that is my heart when I share these videos with you. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for allowing me this platform, this place to be able to come and authentically share with you what it is that I am still learning in the midst of my hardship. If you have liked this video, would you share it with someone you know and love, someone who can really benefit from these words, someone you know who is maybe going through a very challenging season in their life and could really be inspired and could gain some hope from these words. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, become a part of this family. And don't forget to hit that notification bell below to be notified for every time that I upload content just like this one. I post videos here on my YouTube channel every week, 2 to 3 times a week, and so you don't want to miss out on another video. Thank you again for being with me today, friend. I love you and I cherish every person that is here watching this video today and all of my videos. I thank you for your support. It means the world to me. I'm praying for you, and between now and my next video, friend, I pray that you have an awesome day with Jesus. Bye, friend.